Your solar and battery setup is already saving you money on your energy bills, and you're doing your bit to help the environment at the same time. You might also be earning some money with surplus generation that you send back to the grid. That's all good, but is there anything else you can do with that expensive asset of yours to help the environment and be rewarded financially? Well, actually, if you live in the UK and some other countries, there is. In this video, we're going to be looking in detail at the topic of energy trading, where you can earn some real money and be supporting the national grid when it really needs it. Hi there, I'm Gary and welcome back to my channel, Gary Does Solar. I'm pretty excited about this video because it shows where things are heading with residential solar and battery, and it's a future I really like. Not only that, but depending on the brand of equipment you have, it's one that you can take part in today, and I'll show you how in a moment. But first, let's consider what your solar and battery setup already does for you today. Your solar panels generate electricity when the sun is shining, and that electricity will often cover all of your home's demand during the day. And if your panels produce more than the home needs right then, the surplus energy is stored in your home battery. And if your battery becomes full, any remaining excess generation gets exported back to the grid. And in some countries, you'll get paid for that export by your energy provider. Later, when the sun goes down or production drops, your home battery discharges to supply your home's needs, helping you avoid pulling from the grid. And if your battery has a good state of charge left in the evening, you can choose to export some of that energy back to the grid for extra revenue. And in winter, when there is less sunlight and so lower solar generation, many smart tariffs allow you to charge your battery overnight using off-peak rates. Then, the battery can power your home throughout the next day, again helping you avoid pulling from the grid. In summary, your solar and battery setup maximizes self-consumption of your own clean energy and minimizes the electricity that you have to import from the grid, slashing your energy bills and reducing your carbon footprint at the same time. And more than that, any payments that you earn from exported energy further reduce your bill, perhaps even down to zero or even negative, meaning that you're being paid by your energy provider. It's crazy, I know, it's a fantastic return on your investment, but now it's time to take everything to the next level. We're about to enter the world of energy trading. And it's through that your solar and battery setup can be used to its fullest advantage, both financially and environmentally. Let's get into it. To understand utility scale energy trading and why home batteries can now participate in this to earn extra revenue, let's first look at how the national grid stays balanced. Every single second of the day and night, supply must precisely match demand. If there's too little or too much, the AC frequency drifts from the standard 50 Hz or 60 Hz in some countries, and if that happens, things can go wrong fast, including blackouts. In the UK, the National Energy System Operator, NESO, manages this balance. They forecast demand weeks or months ahead for planning, and then refine it a day or two before, using factors like weather, historical patterns, and anticipated renewables generation. Then generators, suppliers and traders cover most of that forecast by buying and selling electricity in the wholesale markets. These are mostly through private bilateral or long-term contracts, but the key visible ones are the spot markets. There are day-ahead auctions run by Epex Spot and Nord Pool that set prices for each half-hour block for the following day, and most of the players lock in here. Then, the intraday markets allow for adjustments right up to about an hour before delivery as better forecasts come in or things change. For example, a power plant requiring to limit production due to unplanned maintenance. And even with all that planning, things aren't perfect. Wind can drop, demand can spike from cold snaps or mass EV charging, or a power plant can trip offline. And that's when NESO uses the balancing mechanism, a real-time marketplace where approved participants bid to increase or decrease output. NESO selects the cheapest or most effective options, often within minutes. And for really urgent, short-notice issues like a sudden frequency drop from lost supply, NESO calls on specialised balancing services to restore stability fast. The quickest are the frequency response services, dynamic containment for post-fault emergencies, dynamic moderation and dynamic regulation. These respond in minutes, sometimes even seconds, injecting or absorbing power to get the frequency back to where it should be, making them perfect for batteries. Sadly, only utility-scale batteries can participate in such services at the moment, but there is now one additional balancing service available. It's called Quick Reserve, and it became fully operational late last year. This new service handles quick pre-fault imbalances, and what's great about it is that it allows the participation of home batteries. Now, your home battery doesn't even begin to compare with a utility-scale battery, but it's all about strength in numbers. By combining the capability of your battery with thousands of other home batteries, a very large and distributed virtual power plant is created. And it is this VPP that can provide quick reserve services to the grid, and possibly additional balancing services in the future. Several entities are able to manage such a VPP, including energy providers. And a good example of this is here in the UK with Octopus Energy and their intelligent Octopus Flux tariff. But the entity I want to introduce to you in this video is a third-party aggregator, and they're doing something pretty special in the UK market. The company is called Axel Energy. They already offer service in the UK today, with other countries to follow. And right now, when the grid needs it, they'll pay you £1 for every kilowatt hour you export. Yes, you heard that right, £1. Contrast that with the export rate you'd normally receive in the UK. For example, with Octopus, it used to be 15 pence per kilowatt hour, but it'll soon be 12 pence. So Axel pays you 8 times as much. You don't even need to change your energy provider to get this either. And even though you might already get paid for your export via your energy provider, Axel still pays £1 on top. How cool is that? Now, to take part, you'll need a compatible system. Right now, Axel supports the following popular brands: Fox, Give Energy, Sig Energy, Solax and Solace. Now, don't worry if your brand isn't listed here currently. Keep checking, as Axel is working hard to onboard new brands all the time. In fact, the best way to speed things up is to request that your brand be added. The more people who ask, the stronger the case Axel can make to those manufacturers. The link to do this is in the description. Now, you can sign up for the service directly, but if you use my referral code here, you'll also get £25 credited to your account. I'll get the same, which means you'll be supporting the work on my channel at the same time. Thank you. Sign up is easy. In fact, it's one of the most seamless sign-up processes I've ever experienced. For my current Give Energy system, it was pretty automatic and only took a few minutes. So how does the Axel service work then? You can choose between two operating modes, events-based and fully optimized mode. In events-based mode, Axel only controls your home battery whenever there is a stress event on the grid, and such events occur maybe 3 to 6 times a month and last for 1 or 2 hours each event. And outside of these events, you're in complete control of your home battery, managing it how you see fit. You can also opt out of events if you want. In fact, if you're not happy with the results, there's no commitment for you to continue service with Axel at all. During an event, you'll likely see your battery being discharged in order to provide export to the grid. And afterwards, you'll get a report on just how much was exported, what you were paid for that, and even a chart to explain exactly what happened. I really like this way of operating. Many people are quite rightly worried about handing over control of their solar and battery setup. Later in the video, you'll get more detail on this mode, and also how Axel operates as a business in my interview with the CTO, where I asked some pointed questions. Oh, I should say, if you're an avid fan of Home Assistant, you might have a number of automations running and worry that Axel events might interfere with those. Axel has also thought of that and provides a special API so that your Home Assistant receives details about upcoming events. You can then build your automations to adapt seamlessly, maybe align your battery discharge, skip any conflicts, or just a heads-up notification on your dashboard. The other mode that Axel offers is fully optimized mode, where you can really maximize the return on your solar and battery investment. It's a little too much to cover in this video, but in summary, it's for people with compatible solar and battery setups that don't want to get into the nitty-gritty of setting up and programming things themselves. In this mode, Axel will do all of that for you, analysing your daily usage patterns, looking at the weather forecast, and making sure your system is programmed to get the very best on whatever smart tariff you're on. You may have seen another video I made where we're slowly moving towards the mass market, and many people will just want to invest in solar and battery and have it run all by itself automatically year after year. This is precisely what Axle solves with their fully optimized mode. And I think it's a great step up for people who have been on the events-based mode for a while and trust how Axle manages their system. I've been using Axle myself for a good few weeks now and I'm very impressed, which is why I'm happy to put my name to the service. Let me quickly take you through the sign-up process and also how the service has worked for me so far. Start by entering garydoessolar.com/Axle into your browser, or simply scan the QR code with the camera on your mobile device. Axle will ask you to upload a recent utility bill, and that's clever because it saves you from having to type a lot of information about your energy tariff, etc. And then, after confirming your home battery is supported, Axle will check they can connect to it without problem. Once that's done, you're up and running and ready for the next event, which will typically happen in a few days. It's that easy. Here's what happened for a recent event I took part in, which is typical for all events. Before the event took place, I received an email like this, telling me what day the event was scheduled for, what time, and for how long. Events are typically 1 or 2 hours, happening maybe up to 6 times a month, but I'm expecting that the frequency of events each month to increase as more and more renewable capacity is added to the grid. Now, I didn't need to do anything here. The email was just for information, letting me know what was happening. But if I didn't want to take part in that particular event for any reason, it was easy for me to opt out. The event itself happened automatically, and afterwards I received another email, notification that the event was successful, and that as soon as they had all the data, Axle would tell me how much I'd earned. And sure enough, a couple of days later, I received a third email, this time telling me how much I'd exported, and what that meant both in earnings and CO2 reduction. What I particularly liked was the inclusion of a chart showing grid carbon intensity that day and exactly where my home battery was employed to help with that. Nice. And it was all as easy as that, with the next event happening a few days later. Now, if you're a follower of my videos, and please do like and subscribe if you can, you'll know that I'm swapping out my Give Energy battery for a Sig Energy one. You can find out the reasons for that in this video here, but the good news is that Axle supports both brands, so I'm not expecting any issues, and I'll of course report on how it all goes. I cannot rate Axle's service highly enough, and I welcome you to give it a go for all the reasons earlier in the video. But there's one even more important reason for supporting services like this. Consumer choice is everything, and where there is little choice, prices are inevitably higher as a result. So all credit to Axle Energy then for investing as they have done to provide you with a compelling alternative to the VPP related tariffs offered by some energy providers. And if you're excited by this kind of innovation too, showing your support now could really help keep the market healthy and prevent it from being controlled by just a handful of big players down the line. Before I made this video, as well as trying out the service for myself to make sure it lived up to my expectations, I also travelled to London to pose some questions to Axle's senior management team. Well, Archie, it's really great to meet you here in your offices in London. How are you doing?
Great. Thanks very much for coming and joining us.
No, it's my pleasure. Archie, I've got a few questions for you then about Axle as a company and also the services that you're offering. So if you're all right with that, maybe I could start there. What made you get into this space in the first place as a company?
So I've got a background in a mixture of energy and AI software. And when I met my co-founder Carl, who had a broad range of experiences from other parts of the energy ecosystem, we realized that we're at this very interesting point in the grid where there are a lot of challenges on the grid because we're adding more renewables and a lot of the infrastructure is getting quite old. But at the same time, we're adding a lot of devices that have the potential to solve some of those problems. So things like EVs, heat pumps, and of course batteries.
Yes.
A lot of those are being installed, but they're not really being utilized to help address the problems that the grid is facing. And so we thought there was this really interesting and important opportunity to build software that connects to those devices and tries to make them more helpful to the grid, to solve some of the problems in the grid that have historically been solved by big fossil fuel power plants.
Yes.
Instead, using a large number of these small devices in people's homes and businesses that are contributing much cleaner energy and leveraging those to solve the grid's problems and returning yields to the people who own those assets. And we thought that this is a pretty important layer of infrastructure that's missing. And if we can figure that out starting in the UK, that can be a really important ingredient to decarbonise grids worldwide.
Now, in terms of the services that you offer customers, the general public, with their systems, you have a number of modes. One of them is events only, where, in fact, maybe you could just explain that to us. How does that actually work?
Yeah, so an event is where the grid is very strained and your battery can play a critical role in supporting the grid. And today that typically means that there is not very much supply in the system, there's not enough energy being injected by generators, and there's quite high demand. So a classic case would be a really chilly winter's evening where it's not very windy, so there's a lot of demand in the system and there's not a lot of wind power providing energy. And so during those events, we will take energy out of your battery and put it back into the grid. And because of the way the grid works, that energy will typically flow to your neighbours, so you'll be supplying them. And that has two really useful effects for the grid. One is that it adds more total energy into the system, and that energy is coming from your battery. Maybe that's energy you put in there earlier in the day from solar, so it's typically very clean energy relative to the energy that you get from a gas peaker plant. But the other really important aspect is that it limits the need for the local infrastructure around you to pull energy from other parts of the system. So it limits the load going through, for instance, the substation up the road from you, because you're kind of sorting yourself out locally. And that's actually a really important and useful thing for the grid as well, because it avoids us having to upgrade all this infrastructure over time, which is really disruptive and expensive.
All right, that all makes sense then. So how many events typically are there, let's say, in a given month?
Typically 4 to 6, we're seeing at the moment. And that can vary a little bit based on location. So I mentioned infrastructure.
Yeah.
Obviously different parts of the country have different levels of infrastructure and different things are strained at different times. So we do see some regional variability. So if you're in a particularly constrained part of the grid, we might be running more events because there's more opportunities to help out there.
Yeah, okay. So Archie, does that mean that different parts of the country, like for example Manchester might have an event that Southern England wouldn't? Are you catered for that as well as part of your infrastructure?
Yeah, exactly. So that's exactly how it works. And of course the grid is this big physical thing,
yeah.
And different corners of the grid have very different problems. So if you live in Scotland, for instance, quite a lot of times during the year there will be too much wind in Scotland to get down to the UK. The cables that bring the energy down are just full.
Yeah.
And so the problems that you see in Scotland are very different from the problems you see in Manchester, which are different from the problems you see in Kent.
Right.
And so we're able to run localised events addressing the needs of those local grids.
Yeah, okay. Well, listen, my next question is all about control. So in order to provide these services to your customers, they have to give over a certain element of control over their inverter and battery systems. What does that actually mean in practice, and how do you convey that to the customer? Because obviously it's quite a big deal for them to hand over control. And for the events-based service, are they able to opt out of particular events if they wanted to?
Yeah, so in terms of control, we connect to the inverter and we need to be able to read what's going on with the inverter, and then we need to be able to control it, either during events only, or if we're in a fully optimized mode, then it'll be much more often that, because we're sort of tweaking the operations of the battery continuously.
Yeah.
But sticking with the events only, so what will typically happen is during an event, so we'll tell you before an event, and then during the event we'll take control of the system and we'll export energy for, say, an hour. And our interactions with the battery are limited to that. So it's 4 to 6 times a month we'll take an hour's worth of control. In between that, you're totally free to continue managing the batteries as you see fit. And actually the way that we are integrated with these systems, we're never kind of taking over the app. You still have the ability to use the app and basically overrule what we're doing, if you really, really want to.
Yeah.
We wouldn't advise that because you won't earn as much money from the program, but ultimately you always have that final control.
Okay.
And then after an event, we send you a report saying basically this is exactly what happened, here's how much energy we exported from your system, this is how much you got paid for it. So hopefully what we've seen is that people initially are a little bit concerned about what does it mean to be giving up this control, but ultimately there is that trust there. We're very, very transparent about what we're doing and why, and so a lot of people become very comfortable with that setup.
Yeah. And honestly, Archie, I think that's one of the most powerful aspects of your service. I've used a number of VPPs and they do their thing, and sometimes they do things that don't make a lot of sense, but there's no reporting, there's no indication back to the customer of why certain actions were made. And I think that causes anxiety for the customer. But what I've seen already, I've been through, I think, 3 events so far with your service, and I always get a report afterwards, and there's a chart in it telling me exactly what happened and why. And I think that's, I wish others would learn from that, because it's, there's one thing handing over control of your system, but you need to be reassured that the system is not just going to do its own thing and do things that it's not supposed to do. And that's what I really like about the Axel service. Maybe we can go to the other mode that you mentioned there, fully optimized. I guess that's where you're handing over control on a semi-permanent basis. Can you just explain a little bit more about how that mode works? And obviously that's a greater thing for a customer to do, to hand over that level of control. So maybe you could just outline a little bit more about the fully optimized mode then.
Yep. So we've seen a lot of people with batteries today are early adopters, and they know absolutely loads about their batteries. And an ideal day for them is one where they interact with their battery 5 to 10 times, and they check in on what's going on, and they tweak the settings. And for those people, they are very good at optimizing their battery themselves, and they have an appetite to do that. And so for them, an events only mode makes sense. We occasionally take control of the battery to do something that's good for the grid, but most of the time the customer wants to be involved in the optimization of the battery. But as this market grows and matures, we're seeing more people who are buying battery for other reasons, more as an economic asset, and they're not so interested in day-to-day checking in on what's going on with the battery. They don't want to be adjusting lots of things all the time. And so for those people, we're offering this fully optimized mode, and that's where Axel takes responsibility for maximizing the value of your battery. And that means 2 things. That means minimizing your bills. So we get information from you about how much you're paying for electricity, how much you get paid for exporting electricity. And then we optimize the battery by comparing your use of electricity to what's going on with your tariff, and then figuring out when to charge the battery in a way that minimizes your bills. And secondly, it means optimizing your battery with respect to what we can earn from the grid.
Yeah.
So exporting energy from your battery at key times. And so this is a service that we offer that basically kind of is a set and forget system.
Yeah.
So you can choose to opt into this. Again, you have that reporting as to what's going on, but we're basically checking every 15 minutes and saying, is the battery doing the right thing based on what we think is going to happen for the next 24 hours, based on the weather forecast and what we think you're likely to be doing in your home and how much energy you're likely to be using.
Yeah.
Are we using the battery in the right way?
Yeah, and I really like that, because you're right, today's market, we're just getting past the early adopters, and they're quite happy to play with their battery. In fact, they want to really get into it, just as you said. But as you move into the mass market, they are quite happy to invest in the system once they understand the benefits that they get. But I think they would like it to be a set it up and then don't touch it again, just let it get on with it. But in terms of the control, maybe a path for customers then is to sign up for Axel for the events only mode and see how they get on. And then once they trust what Axel's doing, and trust of course is a big issue, then they can then move to fully optimized and just let everything happen on its own, but be comforted by the reporting they're getting. I think that's exactly the way things should be done, so I'm really looking forward to trying out that mode when it's available to me. Well, let's talk about the rewards for the customer then. So at the moment, you're paying £1 per kilowatt hour for energy that's exported to help the grid. That's quite a high number compared to the export rate that people can normally get. For Octopus Energy, it was 15 pence, but it's soon to change to 12 pence per kilowatt hour. How are you able to make such high payments, I guess is my question. Yeah,
very good question. Yeah. So the export rate that you get from your supplier is a flat rate. It's the same across time, apart from Octopus have this agile export, but that's a bit different again.
Yeah.
And so in order to get that price, the supplier is kind of blending together the value of you exporting energy for every half hour of the year to come up with a single number. And they'll pay you that price whether you're exporting energy at a time where the grid doesn't really need it, or whether you're exporting it at a time when the grid really needs it. And of course, we're much more specific. We're only paying for these very specific periods of time where the grid is strained and there's a high economic value to providing electricity in those windows of time. And so that's really why we're able to pay much more, because we're not guaranteeing that price for every hour of the year. it's 4 to 6 times a month. When the grid really needs you, we'll take the energy from your battery and we'll pay you this pretty high price.
Yeah. I mean, there's no denying it, Archie. That's a really great deal for the customer. I guess I have to ask you, what might happen to those rates in the future? Will they stay? Will they change?
So we're fixing those rates up until the end of March. So that takes us through winter.
Yeah.
From that point on, we intend to try and keep the rates as they are, but we will need to review them every month as the market evolves. So we'll obviously be heading into summer, and there's lots of useful things your battery can be doing in summer. They're not quite the same things as your battery does in the winter. So for instance, in lots of parts of the UK, at certain times of day, there's more energy than the grid can deal with. So maybe at midday on a summer's day, there's a lot of solar being produced in certain regions. And we want to figure out how to pay you for soaking up that energy with your battery. So the details of the scheme might change a little bit in order to figure out how to compensate people for that kind of soaking up activity and charging the battery rather than discharging it. But the intent is to keep the current rates for as long as possible and keep that £10 a month minimum, because we think it's really important to give people some security in what they're signing up for.
That's really great to hear. I see that you support a number of inverter and battery brands at the moment then. Will you be supporting further brands going forward? I would imagine you would be, but maybe, are you able to talk about any brands that you're working on at the moment?
Yeah, so our intention is to offer the platform to as many people as possible with devices from as many manufacturers as possible. So today we have Fox, Sig Energy, Give Energy, Solax has just gone live, and Solis went live this week.
Oh, great.
That's fresh off the press. In terms of other brands, we've got a few things in the works that I can't talk about right now. But in general, if you're listening to this and you have a battery from another manufacturer and you think it'd be great if that was part of Axel, please reach out to your manufacturer and say, hey, get in touch with the guys at Axel. I'd love to get my battery on the platform.
Oh, that's really great, Archie. I mean, you're not mucking about then in terms of getting new brands onboarded onto your platform. I think one brand I'd like to see on there is Alpha ESS. I don't know where you are in negotiations with them, but if they're watching this video, that would be great to see them on your platform sometime soon. So Archie, I think we've kind of covered the B2C side, or business to customer aspect of your business, but of course you have the B2B side, business to business side, where you're actually dealing on the flexibility markets. Maybe for my viewers, you could just say a little bit about how that works and how you fit into that, and also what might happen with, flexibility rates in the future, as your services and the services of others become more and more popular.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're trying to do is help shift the grid from a kind of centralized command control mode where they use big power stations to accomplish everything to a more flexible distributed system where lots of homeowners and business owners who have batteries installed can participate a little bit and get paid for it. And we're seeing more of these devices come online, but the problems in the grid that we're trying to solve are growing much faster than our ability to bring these devices online. So the rate of wind turbine installation and the rate of infrastructure upgrades being required, that's growing at a much faster rate than our ability to install batteries to solve those problems. So that the need is getting bigger, not smaller over time. And what we've been trying to do is kind of broaden the aperture of the services that these devices can provide. So kind of working with the people in the grid and the regulator to help understand how reliable can these devices be in providing services to the grid? What can we ask them to do and what shouldn't we rely upon them to do?
Yeah.
And over time, what we've seen is these devices are more reliable and they can be a much more useful, economic and clean way of solving problems for the grid than the traditional ways of turning gas peaker plants up and down. So we actually see this market growing over time as everybody in the ecosystem is kind of building more confidence and comfort with the idea that we can rely on 100,000 batteries to solve problems rather than a couple of big power plants.
I really like it, yeah. So maybe just to finish then, what's next for Axel Energy then? So I believe your service is UK at the moment, but are you looking at other markets in the future? And maybe you could say a little bit about how you tend to expand the services and things like that. So what's the future of Axel Energy?
Yeah, great. So there's still quite a lot of work to do in the UK. There's still a lot of services that we can't provide with distributed assets like EVs and heat pumps and batteries that we would like to be able to provide to the grid.
Yeah.
So we're continuing to work pretty hard on that. We're also looking abroad, so we're opening projects in various countries in Europe across the course of this year. And actually, that's a really interesting experience because grids fundamentally have the same problems, but they solve those problems in different ways. And Britain has a really innovative grid, actually. Like the people in the control room and who are regulating the way the grid works are really thoughtful and open-minded about using devices like this. I think partly because we're an island, we kind of have to solve our own problems. We can't just import power from our neighbours as easily as France or Germany.
Yeah.
So we're taking what we've learned in the UK and trying to generalise it across Europe, because ultimately we would like to build a platform that wherever you are in the world, you can bring your device and plug it in, and we'll help you, earn revenue from it and solve problems for the grid. Within the UK, we actually do a lot of work as well with EV charging and heat pumps. So we've obviously talked about batteries a lot, but EV charging is a huge part of what we do as well. And one of our focuses this year is making those three devices play really well together.
Yes.
Because we're often optimizing them individually, and there's a lot of value being left on the table for a homeowner by not having these devices talk to each other well. So we're pretty interested in kind of improving our ability to optimize across all three and offer really kind of clean, unified experiences based on that.
Fantastic. Well, actually, it's been really great chatting to you today, and I think I've learned a little bit more about the company and also the services that you offer. So I think that will be of value to my viewers as well. So thank you very much.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks, Gary.
I hope this video has inspired you to take part in the world of energy trading with your solar and battery setup. And if you do, I'd love to hear how you get on in the comments. Before I go then, can I say a big thank you to all my Patreon supporters. I'm able to make all these videos because of your continued support. And if you'd like to support me in this way as well, it's a small monthly fee and you get access to utilities, exclusive content and Q&As. Just click on the link at the top right to sign up. Thank you. All the best.